to hide this weary soul, this backbones. And I try with all my might, but I just can't win the fight. I'm slowly drifting, a vagabond. Just when here's the good news, let's sing it. And just when I ran out of road, I met a man I didn't know, and he told me that I was not alone. You picked me up, you turned me around, you placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, because he healed my heart, you changed my name, forever free. I'm not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, I thank God. Oh, I thank God. I cannot deny what I've seen. Got no choice but to believe. My doubts are burning, hey, like the ashes in the wind. So long to my old friend. Burden and bitterness, you can't just keep it moving. No, you ain't welcome here. Now till we walk. Now till I walk streets of cold, I'll sing of how you saved my soul. This wayward one has found its way back home. You picked me up, you turned me around, you placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, because he healed my heart, he changed my name, forever free. I'm not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, I thank God. Oh, I thank God. Let's declare it tonight. Come on, hail us another one. Hail us another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Come on. Hail us another one. I am free. Oh, I am free. Yes, I am free. Hail us another one. I am free. Oh, I am free. Oh, I am free. Hail us another one. I am free. Oh, I am free. Yes, I am free. Hail us another one. I am free. Oh, I am free. Yes, I am free. Hail us another one. I am free. Oh, I am free. Yes, I am free. Hail us another one. I am free. Oh, I am free. Yes, I am free. Hail us another one. I am free. Oh, I am free. Because you picked me up, you turned me around, you placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior. Why? Because he healed my heart, you changed my name, forever free. I'm not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior. Oh, I thank God. Oh, I thank God. Oh, I thank God.
All right, guys. Hey. So there's gonna be times tonight when we start singing things, and it may not be on the screen, and you may think, what's going on? The words aren't on the screen, but we're singing something, and that's where you just jump in, because the water's fine, all right?
We give our affection, all our attention, nothing more worth it than being with you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. We are so happy to have you here at the conference. And of course, in this track, this conversation, as we're calling it Future Forward, this particular conversation about disruptive engagement, this track is really twofold, as the entire conference, where we've talked all about since we've been here a couple days ago. This is a 100-year movement. We're at the end of the first quarter. What do you do with a football team? American football, I should say. At the end of the first quarter, you pull the team off the field, you celebrate wins, points on the board, you look at mistakes. Hey, we missed a tackle or threw an interception, and with all that in mind, you look ahead to the future, right? And what's coming, what's now, what's next, how do we play in the second quarter? And for those of you online watching or on Right Now Media later, as well as on the room, the collective movement goal now is to see that by 2050, 11 o'clock on Sunday, certainly in the U.S., if not elsewhere, is known as the most undivided hour of the week. And the strategies of how and what to do will continue to be worked out as the movement matures in the next 25 years. But I'm so excited to be joined with by my friends. And each one of them has unique lived experience and stories, life stories, as well as their own ongoing work. They're engaged, as I mentioned in the first session. Nobody here is like a consultant. Every single person is a practitioner. They're getting it done. They know how to do it. And that's what we want to lean into, and some of the uniqueness of the folks I invited to join me this morning, I think you'll be really blessed by. So, Sehi, tell everybody about you and who you are. And I know your husband Damon's here, so take it away.
Thank you. So my name is Sehi Duran, so don't get confused with my last name. I am Korean, born and raised. I immigrated to America when I was 15 with my single mom and my younger brother. By the time I was senior in high school, I actually got deported back to South Korea. What seemed like a curse really turned out to be an unexpected blessing, because as a result of hitting rock bottom, you seek God on your own, right? And so I went to church, and that's exactly where I met my lovely husband. Been married for 22 years with 3 kids. God's been faithful. So we together, I'm the first Christian in the family and first minister. So I am ordained, and my husband is ordained in the Assemblies of God. But I never thought about being in ministry, because that's not the story of my upbringing, right? And I never saw an example. I knew nothing about ministry. In fact, if I knew, I probably wouldn't have signed up for it, right? It's a hard work. But marrying into the minister husband at a young age, it was challenging, but with the clear call from the Lord to serve Him, we've been pastoring with Church Planet in South Korea, beautiful international church, completely different demographics than the international church we planted in Springfield, Missouri back in 2015. That's still going very strong today, but we loved it. Loved serving people from all nations. When we're in South Korea, we love serving the U.S. military. Even more so now, because my second son, who's 19, is enlisted in the Air Force. It's the second week in basic training. I've written him 10 letters. I didn't get anything back. So pray for me. I'm mourning a little. But yeah, just love being in a Christian world, and just through that intercultural ministries, the opportunity to work with the refugees, immigrants, international students, all of that, and being part of these conversations about unity and diversity, not in the political sense, but in a biblical sense, and just how there is a healing and grace and beautiful partnership, and just the opportunity to live out the gospel in action, you know. And so I had that wonderful ministry experience and education with my wonderful husband supporting, and I'm going to tell you that because my dissertation really was about male champions for women in ministry. So without men like you, my husband, and the others in this room, women may not have the platform to truly live out the call of God without you guys opening the doors and advocating and supporting and just really standing with us. So that's a bit of my story.
Well, thank you, Sehi. And we're going to talk about women in ministry, for lack of a better term, and where we are as a country and understanding. But I so appreciate you bringing up biblical. Probably get into some of the refugees and immigration as well with some of your lived experience. But it is biblical. You know, this isn't about whatever you want to call it, DEI, woke, whatever all these phrases are. It's gospel, it's biblical that we be one in the church for the sake of the gospel, equity across the board. And I know, Chris, you know a little something about that, my brother. So tell us about you.
Just a little bit. Good morning. My name is Chris Williamson, and I am originally from Baltimore, Maryland. Grew up in church. but didn't have a relationship with Jesus. Met Jesus through a camp that was promoted to young people in our city. Went to the hills of Maryland and met Jesus there. Then went to college, a Christian college, which I didn't want to go to, but my dad encouraged me to go to this Christian college. And it was at that college that I received my call to preach. And it came through rap music. I was a rapper, you know, back in the day when rap was real, you know. That's when I rapped. And but I had a professor, probably the only African American on staff at this particular institution, who encouraged me to write rhymes about God. So being a burgeoning believer, I started doing that. And he said, and I'll take you out with me when I speak. And I'm thinking he's going to be speaking in, you know, coliseums or big auditoriums. No, he was speaking on street corners, jails, detention centers. And that's where I began to learn how to do ministry. And as you mentioned last night, Mark, I went to school with some guys from DC Talk. And they started their group and went to Nashville and took off. We started our group, went to Nashville, and it blew apart. And I was like, God, why did you bring me to Nashville? I would never go to Nashville. I remember Hee Haw that my dad watched, and Minnie Pearl and Roy Clark. I'm like, no. But it was in Nashville that God called me to start a multiracial church right there. And so for the past 30 years, my wife and I, who's a children's book author who you just heard in the last gathering, we've been at the helm serving that community in Nashville, Franklin, Tennessee, Brentwood, Tennessee, and we love it. It's hard, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and tell them about the name of the group because it preceded DC Talk. I mean, tell them a little bit about that real quick.
Our group's name was Transformation Crusade, and we were produced by gospel icon Fred Hammond, and we were able to, you know, minister on some of their songs as well, and go out and open for them, and you know, do all that stuff. But God brought me to Tennessee, what I thought was going to be for music, but it was a setup. He brought me there to go from evangelism to more discipleship, pastoral ministry, doing something I said I would never do. I said I would never. Number one, I said I would never preach. And I was like, okay, God, I'll preach. I'll never be a pastor. Okay, God, I'll be a pastor. I'll never start a church. Okay, God, I'll start a church. I'll never start a multiracial church. Okay, God, I'll start a multiracial church. So I think one of the speakers said, give God your yes.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad.
Yeah, I always think how God just shows us the next step. And of course, if he showed you 100, you probably wouldn't do it, right? So it's one step at a time. But you really got to look up Transformation Crusade. And so often in music, I know, and probably other areas, there's a group that goes ahead of its time, and there's not enough traction yet, but it paves the way for others. And that's what Chris and Transformation Crusade did for DC Talk and so much other Christian. Later on, Urban D and Leonce, not Leonce, Lecrae, thank you. Yeah, Lecrae and all that. All right, Melissa is my newest friend, Melissa Mixon from Denver, and a good friend of mine, Jason Jans. You're out there with a wonderful work, Cross Purpose. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. My name is Melissa Mixon. I'm from New Orleans. Spent some time in Houston where I kind of got my feet wet on inner city ministry. I was young. And in 2012, moved to Costa Rica and spent 10 years there really walking with people. But that was where the Lord really convicted me of kind of what I like to call a hug and a hot dog. It's easy for us to go into the community and serve and say we're fixing, we're doing some things that make us feel good about ourselves. But the conviction to truly walk with people all the way and get our hands really into their lives and them into our lives as well, I think it's a very mutually beneficial, transformative work, and we'll talk about that today. But the ability to sit, I love the analogy of the table. I've been moved by that. It's a thing I've always referenced, but about the table, who's at your table? Where is your table? Who is the community? I think we all have a lot of things that we can do that make us feel good, that are comfortable for us, but I believe if we sit long enough at the table with people in the community, the thing that God is specifically calling you to is probably going to make you uncomfortable, and there's really innovative ideas behind how to do some of that, but innovation will challenge your comfort, and I spent 10 years being very uncomfortable abroad, seeing beautiful work, people moving out of slums, changing the legacy and the trajectory of their family. And so in 2022, moved back to Denver. I'm not from Denver, met Jason Jans, who is a wild man and doing incredible work in Denver, just, very very countercultural. And we are taking people from poverty, generational poverty, to wealth. We've got people that we walk with from incarceration, homelessness, addiction, who are now buying homes and changing legacy of their family, investing in retirement, getting the mental health counseling that they need. But it does take walking with people and all the way. And so that is what I'm doing now. But I believe it's also who we're called to be.
Yeah, you got to look that up. It's called Cross Purpose. It came out of Providence Bible. I was just at Providence Bible a couple weeks ago preaching. I've known Jason and Juan and the folks there, but this isn't just talk what's going on there. They got the goods, they get it done, and they're looking to scale, I think, even beyond Denver, but it's an amazing work. We'll hear more about that. And then Christopher Bennett. We've been knowing each other, as they say, for what, 10-ish years or something? But
yeah, it's been a long time.
Really, in my opinion, the world's foremost clergy expert on AI. And we're not just talking about ChatGPT, AI. And Christopher has been in it for, I'd say, at least 20 years, thought leader in that. Presbyterian pastor. So Christopher, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I too, I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up in Ohio in a trailer park, and was the first person in my family to go to college. And my junior year in college, I was a pretty good student. I was in an honors fellowship, but I was pre-law and history and economics, and my goal, I was going to be a lawyer. And I had some great mentors that I was assigned through an honors fellow I was in, and they sat me down. They said, "Tell us about yourself," and I did. And they said, "Well, let's get back to you tomorrow." And so I got back with them, and they said, "Chris, we don't know how to tell you this, but you don't want to be a lawyer. You want to be a pastor. You just don't know it yet. You need to go to seminary." And I didn't know there were Protestant seminaries, so my response was, "Well, I don't want to be celibate," because which they had a good laugh about. But I ended up at Princeton Seminary. Really fumbling forward, but I stayed with a wonderful ethicist there, Max Stackhouse, and became really engaged in ethics, and met who would become my wife. We got married, went back to Ohio, which we never thought we'd do, to a rural call, went to Hilton Head Island, which is a completely different experience. Ended up in Fort Lauderdale, which was more of a suburban call, even though it was downtown. And now we are at First Miami in downtown Brickell in Miami. 50 different nationalities represented in the church. The church has more than doubled in the last year. We have the largest development project in Presbyterian church history happening on our property that's going to allow our church to do some amazing things, I think, that most churches are only able to dream about. And so God has really blessed the ministry and everything that's happened. And in the middle of all this, I did, it was the world's first degree in the intersection of science and religion. I was the only person in that degree program that didn't have a science background, and they were all second career pastors who had all been scientists prior. Fascinating background. And after I got out of that program, I had a guy who self-describes himself as an angry atheist, and he had written an article for Gizmodo, and Gizmodo said, "This is so anti-religion, we're not going to print it. So we want you to go back and get religious perspectives on AI." And he really struggled to find people because there just wasn't anybody talking about it. And so he came to me, and I gave him a quote, something to the effect of, "I don't think Christ's redemptive purposes are necessarily limited to human beings," which I think is a pretty general theological statement. The rocks will cry out, right? But the world didn't know what to do with that because it was in Gizmodo, and then the next day, I don't know how, but it was on the front page. The Daily Mail took a picture of me somewhere offline and put me and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking next to one another. And then all of a sudden, life got crazy. And so anyhow. So
we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of you, we should give Christopher a hand because you all received the book on AI coming in the door as part of just registration, and Christopher and their publisher put that book together, got it out for the conference, and we'll hear more about that in a moment. So before we go forward now and next, it is now and next, but disruption is a concept developed by Harvard Business School in 1996, the late Clayton Christensen, and it's really called disruptive innovation. And there's a difference between disruptive innovation and sustaining innovation. Sustaining innovation, you might think of like Japanese Kaizen, nothing wrong with that, but disruption is totally different. It's when you get to the top of an S curve, the worst thing you can do is pay attention to your current customers. That's what stagnates and ultimately sends companies or organizations like churches into decline. So when you get to the top of an S-curve, you have to reinvent. And that's the idea of now and what's next. And it doesn't mean you blow up what's been. It means you build on that foundation, but you always have to keep moving. And that's true, I found, in my own personal life. Former youth pastor, become a church planter, then get into a multi-ethnic ministry and economics. And so we're always reinventing, but that's true for organizations as well. And that's really what this group is about. So before we go a little further, let's start with you, Chris, because I love the disruptive innovation you brought roughly 5-ish years ago. Think back to the murder of George Floyd, the angst in the country. Statues particularly were being torn down, right, pulled down, and great divide. There's always been division, but that was a moment. But the way you navigated that was very disruptive because, on the one hand, you got people fighting to keep these statues and names of schools in place, and on the other, they got people pulling them down, trying to burn down the certain history, if you will. And between these two polarized opposites, there's a man of integrity, Chris Williamson, who really brought healthy, biblical, gospel-forward thinking in a moment and disrupted the innovation, the trajectory there in Nashville. So tell us that story and what got into you, man, and how did you navigate the complexity of that to bring this health about and advance the gospel in the way you did?
Wow. I'm part of a group called the Fuller Story Initiative. And if you look it up, you'll see our story. There's no way I can get into all of it. But basically, being in a southern city with a Confederate monument right in the center, we know that there's a history with that in southern cities, that those statues are put there by the daughters of the Confederacy, by the sons of the Confederacy, to be able to mark territory and to tell their version of what happened with the Civil War and even going back into slavery. And so those icons, they can be very disruptive in their own right, and they can serve as lightning rods in communities, as well as to say to certain people groups, you can come this far but no further. And with these things positioned outside of courthouses, it's making messages saying that you won't get justice here. So those statues that were put up at the end of the Civil War and even in the 50s, as we saw the civil rights movement beginning to make strides, they were there to intimidate, to try to stop movement, to make America a better place. And so when back in Charlottesville, Virginia, when there was a disruption over what happened with the removal of a General Lee statue, that's when President Trump, during his first term, said there were good people on both sides. And there was a young white woman who was murdered at that time, run over by a car. Her name was Heather Heyer. And so the whole nation, especially in the South, it was just a combustible moment. And so knowing that we had a statue there in our city, we wanted to get together and have a prayer meeting with leaders in the city so that we could be proactive, so that we would not have to be reactive if something happened in our city. So we got together because for a lot of people, Christians included, those statues are sacred. And that's another discussion. Those statues are sacred. So we got together and prayed in the rain. My wife was with us and several people from the community. There were also police officers there making sure that there were word that the Ku Klux Klan would come, on and on and on. And so one of the preachers said that the statue in the center of Franklin, that's been up since 1899, needs to come down. And as a result of that, he got death threats. And so a local historian in the city pulled us together. First, he went to that white pastor and said, we need to talk about this. That white pastor had the wherewithal to say, I won't talk about this without my black brothers sitting at the table at the beginning of this conversation. So that's how myself and another black pastor got involved. So it was 2 white men, 2 black men who got together and talked about the situation. And we walked away believing that God didn't call us to take down that statue in the center of Franklin, Tennessee, because to remove it would not remove the history. But let's talk about what we can put up that tells a fuller story of what happened as well as a story about African Americans and our contributions to the city of Franklin. So for 4 years, we were on this project of putting up historical markers that talked about where our people were auctioned in that city, a slave market that was there, a riot that occurred over racial issues, on and on. We talked about Reconstruction. So the city got behind us 100%. And this was a time where politicians knew they needed to be politically correct because of George Floyd and even what happened with Dylan Roof back in South Carolina. So they wanted to be on the right side of history for that moment. So we met with all of the aldermen and women, the mayor and the city planner, and raising money. And so long story short, the city got behind us 100% to not only put up the markers, but also to put up a statue of a United States colored troops soldier. Because in our community, once the North took over the city of Franklin, the courthouse in downtown Franklin became a place where once the Emancipation Proclamation went forward, you would have the enslaved in that community who would come to that courthouse to join the Federal Army. So right there in the city, the courthouse is still there. They would go in as slaves or enslaved, come out as soldiers in the Union Army, and they would join the effort in Nashville. So we were able to put a statue right there in front of that courthouse depicting what happened then, as well as a picture of going forward, so that when I bring my grandson into the city, he can see that we made a major contribution to the outcome of the Civil War. So we're telling the whole story, a fuller story of what happened. And then the people from, and let me back up, Mark. There were so many people that came to that because they were looking for something different, something better. Because people are either taking monuments down without any kind of legal ability to do that. They were just just being rebellious. And so because we weren't taking anything down, we were putting things up. It just brought hope to the community that we weren't trying to erase history. We were just trying to tell parts of history that got left out. People came, and we had over 1 billion media hits. What's the little boy, Justin Bieber? He came and filmed a video for Christmas in our city, and he only got 400,000. But man, so people got behind it, including Pulaski, Tennessee, down the street, where the Ku Klux Klan was founded. They sent delegates to what we did, and they ended up 2 years later putting up their own statue to the United States Colored Troop soldiers in Pulaski, Tennessee, which again is only known for the KKK and Nathan Bedford Forrest. And so God was redeeming the historical moment. And then just a few months ago, in the city of Columbia, Tennessee, just a few miles from us, they put up a statue of Thurgood Marshall, because in 1946 there was a situation that broke out as black soldiers came back home and they were being mistreated at home. A fight breaks out, a riot breaks out, black people are arrested and they're put on trial, and so the NAACP is called, and Thurgood Marshall comes to represent the people who had been arrested. And he also had to watch out for his life because he was almost lynched by a lynch mob while being in Columbia, Tennessee, to defend those people. So he got them off, and he was able to survive because this was before Brown versus Board of Education had they been successful in killing him. So with that rich history there, a statue was just unveiled. And wow, so it's just beautiful to see. Again, we're trying to affect history by telling the truth.
Yeah, that's right.
And putting up monuments that will endure so that people going forward can learn our history. So,
Well, the disruptive innovation that I see in that, of course, is just your biblical depth, your commitment to the gospel, and the faithfulness of Christ, and to a gospel and a church and a world, hope for all, not just some. It was such wisdom in that moment, and that's what I think a lesson for those of us listening is. When it's the old saying, cooler heads prevail, right? And in staying cool, calm, collected, and thinking deeply about how can I speak life into this versus continue to fan the flames of polarization. And that's exactly what I saw that you did. And it's wonderful to see that story, if you will, is continuing some of the things you're saying. I think about also, he talking to you about where you didn't erase the past. You can't erase the past. Things happened and all, but we learned from it. We go on. But the fuller story. And what happened was in addition to or multiplication. And so often the fear side means if something is being now elevated or promoted, that somehow something's being put down or erased or has to go away, and it becomes a win-lose situation versus a win-win situation. And our God was disruptive. Think about, he turned darkness to light, right? That's a disruptive move. He entered darkness and gave us light. Death, he overcame, restored death and gave us life, light and darkness. So all to say, that's what I see in your story. So talking about that, kind of picking up where Chris said, this idea of women in ministry, that too has been, in a sense, marginalized, different things and different denominations of people think that. I know you've probably fought your own battles with that, but you really do it with grace. And that's what again, there's people that, no, women can't do this or that, and others that are championing it. And again, there's polarization. But I see you as a disruptive, healthy leader that just brings your whole self to the environment and it begins to influence. So talk to us about that kind of in the same way. What are we adding? We're not getting rid of men. We're adding the voice of the imago Dei, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
imago
male
Dei.
and female, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us about that.
We need each other, obviously. I just want to piggyback on what you said because it goes into women in ministry. So around the same time, I was pastoring in a cultural church. We planted. Thank you for your hard work. And so that was really pioneering our work in 2015. And by 2020, pandemic, all these conversations, and so I was leading our church as a lead pastor by that time, but I was also serving our city as a police chaplain, and it was actually with my husband's encouragement. He started that journey first, saw the benefit of doing that as a pastor. It wasn't a side gig, it was a very intentional effort to go into the city and be the light into the darkness, and we loved it. I loved it. And I still remember the first call, the response to the call. It was a suicide to a family. It was a gay couple. I've known, people like that, but it was a gay couple. One person committed suicide, hung himself on a tree. I saw the dead person for the first time in my entire life. And Holy Spirit gave me this spirit of calmness. You said cool hand, right? And so calmness to go there and not only to minister to this a partner who's mourning, and in that moment I was able to offer prayer, and that person grabbed my hand so tight. I was, yes, I need it. I will take anything, and it was just a beautiful moment, right? So situations like that, when our city is hurting, we're not going to talk about, okay, who's going to be pastoring, who's not going to be pastoring, who's going to be in the pulpit on Sunday morning and preach a sermon or not. When the whole city is hurting, when our community is aching, we just all need to roll up our sleeves and just go and serve and help. And being in that space as a lead pastor and a chaplain, it just gave me a very beautiful, unique space for me to enter this hurting people, hurting community, and be the voice of healing on behalf of God. And I think it's a beautiful thing as a woman and a mom who naturally brings, not to say that guys are not naturally, awesome and nurturing. My husband is awesome. In fact, my daughter loves him more than she loves me, so it's okay. But like that nature of women, we like to care for the hurting, like just really emotionally available. That was really, really critical and timely. And as a result of the city just kind of collecting different voices, and I wasn't the only chaplain, obviously. I was the only female chaplain at that time, and I took that as a huge responsibility because I was able to even minister to the police officers' wives. We had some deaths, the officers died, and I was able to navigate in that difficult space, right? And there are officers against the people group who are trying to serve the community, but the very community they're trying to protect and serve are kind of hateful because of all these national conversations against racism and whatnot. But in that space, because of God's peace and the mandate to go be a peacemaker, right? So you enter that space disruptively but gracefully, and the city recognizes. City noticed our hard work and our heart, our genuine heart. Like we weren't there with an agenda to say, hey, we want more people at our church. What we're saying is that we're here to serve, and I see you hurting. What can I do to help you? What can I do to build a bridge? And so our tagline for our church was building bridges between Christ, community, and cultures. And we just try to find any meaningful way to live that out. And because we're doing that consistently, right? Not just one time show up and, hey, here's some cupcake, you're in a hot dog and whatever hugs. We're not just doing that for one time. It's like every time. Every day, every week, we're there and visible. And so you know what it's like when we have multi-ethnic conversation. You see same people all the time. Why is that? Because we care about this. Because this is a mission of God. And so the city recognized, and then the mayor invited me to chair, actually co-chair with a business leader, the mayor's initiative on equity and diversity and inclusion. And this wasn't in just direct response to the DEI conversation, but it was everything, the comprehensive. And the chief of police, who is a good man of God, felt he needed help from the faith community. He's a strong man of God, been in this role for many, many years, but he was at the point like, I need more people of faith to come together. So I'm sitting at this table, co-chairing a group of 20 people from all walks of life, some who agree with women ministries, some don't. I'm chairing, and I think it was a strategic in God's wisdom where I was paired with the business leader, and we're talking about how can we lead this group together. And he's young in faith, and I'm like encouraging him, like, we can do this together. We have elevator conversations when we're trying to go up to the city hall and to this meeting hall. And we're like, okay, we can do this. Are you nervous? Yeah. Yes, I am, but we're gonna do this together. You know, that disruptive partnership, we couldn't put it together, but God did. And because God did it, and because our mission is one goal, doesn't matter what denomination, whether you're Christian or non-Christian, guys, look, our city is hurting. People are hurting, and we're hopeless. What can we do about it together? So when we are sharing this common pain and common goal to build our community together, I think that was a beautiful thing that only Holy Spirit could do. So in that meeting where I knew several people who were sitting there, both men and women, who weren't validate my calling as a woman minister, but we were in that space. I wasn't preaching to them, and I was totally okay with that. We are all totally okay with that because we're here for the one mission, for the same common goals, and that was a beautiful thing. Now, have I lost great friends when I became an ordained pastor? Not when I became ordained, and I was really lucky to live in a city at that time, the hub of the national office of the Assemblies of God. And so, not to say that there's no people who disagree, but I've learned over the years not only experience but also education, and to honor every servant of the Lord, no matter the branch, because just because I am at the pulpit preaching and somebody disagrees doesn't mean that their work is invalidated. And just because I am preaching on a Sunday morning or anywhere else doesn't mean that the good work that God is doing is not valid. So when we focus on what truly matters, and I learned to respect and honor. And I love my brothers and sisters who are in the complementarian camp where they say, hey, we are all made in the image of God. We just have a different roles in ministry. I respect that because you studied the theology and you're trying to remain faithful theologically and practically to what you learn is to be true. And I can support that because I actually respect that because you're not changing your theology based on where you stand, right, where other people stand. I also have to remain faithful to what I know is true based on my understanding and the call. The biggest thing, Mark, is the call. If I were to ask every pastor and say, why did you become a pastor? Nobody will say, well, for the pay, of course. Nobody will do that. Nobody does it for the pay or the title or for influence, although we are influencing the whole community and generations. I didn't want to be a pastor, Mark. In fact, when he called me to ministry 22 years ago, it was a month after I got married. And God called me in my dream, and I woke up to his voice. For the first time, I heard his voice, and he says, Sehi, you're going to be a minister on your own right one day. And I said, I have no clue what that even means. What does it even mean? And for me, as someone who grew up in South Korea, I've arrived. I've married a pastor. Like spiritually, like that's the highest I could go as a woman. And like this is a wonderful place to serve and highly respected in my culture. Like I don't need anything else, right? But then when God called me to that, it was very confusing. So I didn't tell my husband right away. I'm like, I'm not going to tell him because I had this little bit of fear in me. And like if I actually verbalize it, that means it may come true one day. but I couldn't hold it in anymore. I literally physically got sick. So I had to tell him, and I'm like fearing, like, man, I just married this guy a month ago. Like, if I were to tell him, would he leave me? Would he think I'm crazy? Would he like abandon? Like, would I be a widow all of a sudden? You know, like, or like he's gonna like, not that he's gonna die, he's gonna leave me. But I was really shocked at his response. And that was a turning point. When I shared with him, I was like, that's so amazing, Sehi. Like, I knew there was a call upon you. Like, I'm here 100% for you. Like, that is so good. And I'm thinking, like, wait, you're not mad? You're not disappointed? Like, is this a okay thing? Like, and so with his support, I didn't start, obviously, as a lead pastor. I started as a good, faithful pastor's wife that I love. And I love and respect pastor's wife. That is their calling. Keep doing what you're doing. We need good pastor's wives, right? But it's a calling. Yeah. If God didn't call me, it came to the question of, would I obey? Would my response be a yes or no?
Yeah.
It came down to that.
Yeah, calling is so important. In both your story and Chris's, whether women in ministry, what you've done in the statue, and you brought up the term peacemaking. And, you know, in the Beatitudes, if you ever thought about the Beatitudes, in every Beatitude you get something for what you do. You know, blessed are they that mourn, they're comforted, etc. But in only one Beatitude, Matthew 5:9, are you identified with someone? And it's in Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And that's really that disruptive work. Disruption, in the one sense of disruption, we're going to disrupt this meeting in a negative way, but that's not what disruption means, again, the way we use it. Disruption is this innovation that takes to an entire new height, and that's what our world needs, is disruptive innovation in the area of peacemaking. And it requires us to be nuanced people. It requires us to think and to act with nuance, to speak with nuance. And that doesn't mean we're silent. It just means how we're able to advance the gospel with wisdom. And you see that in you, and both Sehi and Chris. So Melissa, talking about peacemaking, you've been doing it a long time, both overseas, but in Denver, and the work of Cross Purpose. What I love about the work that you're doing on the nonprofit side, of course, you're a woman in ministry, woman in leadership, but on the nonprofit world. But you all are not just talking about the shalom of the city. You are bringing a shalom to the city in a disruptive way, positive. So talk to us about that and what you're learning and seeing from your perspective, both for what's now and what's next. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if you guys know, but there are a lot of nonprofits out there. And I didn't grow up in a Christian community or a home. I grew up in New Orleans. But I saw a lot of good things. Moved to Houston. I went to LSU, got saved in college. Go Tigers. And then in Houston, is where I began just to kind of be exposed to all of the nonprofits, all of them. I feel like I would go on a Saturday serve, and I'm like, wow, there's like 1,000 nonprofits. Why is there so much brokenness in this town? And just as a kind of trailblazing, avant-garde, young, I'm going to save the world. I mean, you're young and you think you can do all these things. I was like, there's got to be a solution to this that, like, maybe we could all do together. I don't know. It seems a little bit like better use of our resources. And there was a scripture in Acts 3. We all know the Gate of Beautiful, where the lame man sat. And I promise I won't preach a sermon. But it was a scripture that actually convicted me and kind of pushed me into this work. And Peter and John were on their way to pray, and God disrupted their journey to do this thing they were going to do. They didn't even have to think about it. This guy had been there his whole life. Obviously, people gave him money, or he wouldn't be coming back. I don't know. If they kept giving me money, I'd keep coming back too. And but the interesting thing about the scripture is it spells out this experience of him being healed all the way down to his ankle bones were healed. And it shows this image of Peter bending over, and it's like he grabbed his right hand. And I mean, you just read through this scripture and you see this act of giving yourself to, if you look like a big guy, if you laid on the ground and I had to pick you up by myself, I don't know if I could do it. I'm pretty strong. I work out, but I don't know if I could do it with one hand, especially if he had lame ankles and couldn't walk his whole life. He is dead weight, right? And you see this beautiful story of them stopping, giving everything. He was doing all the work pulling for a minute. And then he says that his ankles were strengthened and he could stand up on his feet, and he rejoiced. And the whole city came, if you look a few chapters later, to hear the gospel. There is an element of what are you going to do to give all of yourself to someone to see the fullness of their restoration. And in Denver at Cross Purpose, where we talk about poverty, I think when we say the word poverty, we think money. Probably everyone in here thought that, but we are all in poverty. If it's not a spiritual poverty, it's a relational poverty, the brokenness that we live in. And the call of the gospel is to see restoration and transformation of our lives, to love God and love people. I think all of us, especially for a ministry, would say the hardest part about ministry is people. And it's just because we're all broken, whether you're the one helping or the helper, or being helped, we're all broken. And that's why that's this mutual beneficial work. It requires different thought, though, because poverty, I believe, is produced, but also opportunity is produced. So which one are you going to produce? We have an opportunity to say, what is the actual problem in our city? It's brokenness. So if we restore the human, you'll see systems and opportunities begin. You'll start to recognize, what are those systems and opportunities that I can create? And innovation will offend comfort. It is something you're going to have to you'll spend hours and hours and hours. I know I've sat in a room with people many times where you're still thinking about this problem. I have got to do something with my team and the community around me. We have what it takes. We just have to figure out what it is that we need to do. What is it going to take? And I'll share a story. I spent 10 years in Costa Rica, built a beautiful ministry there. It's still operating today, run by locals. I sit on the board as the president. And we worked in the slums. And if you've ever been into a third world country and experienced the slum, it is not anything you probably could experience in the States. These people were immigrants even within Costa Rica, and trying to help them break out of economic poverty and build a legacy for their family is bizarre to say out loud. And we were seeing people do it, because it took us as a group to say, what is this worth? This is that healing, transformative work of Christ in my own life. And I know that it's poverty can be a lack of access to opportunities and resources and relationships. So how can I break down those barriers for them? And very uncomfortable for us. We had this group of people. They were these ladies. They just made bread. But we wanted them to be ethical in their way of how they were going to start this business. And you can't operate a business out of your home. You need a permit for that. Well, they live in a slum. They don't even have a home. They were squatters in tin. How do we fix this problem? They can't afford to have a home. So we went to the municipality, and we basically, let's say there were 11 steps that they had to do. They could get to number 11, but 11 was you needed the permit for your home. And we said, how about this? Give them 5 years, a term of 5 years to get that permit. That gives them time to sell a lot of bread, and save and put that money aside, and then they can have a home. They can rent a home, have that dignity of providing for their family in a safe place. And guess what? They said yes. All we had to do was break a barrier and push an opportunity, creative idea that was so simple, just an amendment. Give them 5 years. And we saw people leaving slums, able to get on their own 2 feet, teach their own children. There were many skills beyond bread, but the point of it being, if you are going to truly see revival in your communities, in the transformation that it requires, it's going to make you very uncomfortable, and you're going to need a community of people to do that. With Cross Purpose, it's not this work that we have that's like, oh yeah, we're going to go buy homes. It takes the entire community. I sit with policymakers, I sit with CEOs of organizations, and we're like, you guys have got to break down your own barriers and systems within your work that you do, and make some allowances here for us to kind of break through some of this red tape to make this happen. And it takes everyone at the table to see value in the human. And just as a side note, if you're a leader in your organization, transformation is downstream from culture. The culture you create within your organization, within your church, has got to be one that demonstrates we are willing to go all in, all the way, all the time, not a hug and a hot dog in a park, because true transformation won't come from just the feel good. They've got to see that this is just who we are. So that is kind of that innovative approach. There's so many ways that you can impact your community, but it's just who's at your table. You could ask me, Melissa, what is it that you did? Well, I could tell you, but who's at your table? What skills, what gifts did God equip you with? Where is your table? What community is it, and what need is around you? And I'll challenge you with this too. There are a ton of needs, hence the millions of nonprofits. But what need is God calling you to meet? Because it was overwhelming. I sat for 3 years with our team, and I said, we will not do anything I want to know which needs specifically is God calling us to meet, because there's a lot of other good people doing really good work, making good trouble. But what is it that God wants us to do? And honestly, it was a thing I was the least equipped to do. I was so good at so many things, and I was like, you sure it's not this one? Are you sure it's not this over here? And the thing that we were called to was the one we had to go get training, pull in the community to help us with. And it was through those weaknesses that the Lord was glorified. His work was made great. We're not perfect. We need other people, but together in unity and community, being willing to just be pushed really far out there and just say yes.
Yeah, I was just out in Denver, and I had the opportunity to go, and I want to get to Christopher to keep going. But a thread here is not only the peacemaking side, but shalom to the city beyond just words, that so many people talk, see the city flourish and shalom, and they do absolutely nothing except talk about it. But the other word that we should take away from this is, it says, I think, their engagement. I think what's now and next is, it used to be that pastors pastor a church, and they preach the gospel, and they're just fully focused on the spiritual game, if you will. But that's led us into stagnation and decline. It is very spiritual to engage the community in all the ways that these folks are doing. And of course, Christopher, that's going to get to you on the engagement and the AI stuff. But very quickly, Melissa, tell them most recently, the nonprofit that is basically came out of the church, it's still in the church. It's connected like two sisters in the same house. $100 million in grant funding just in the last, I think, 2017. But very quickly, give us the elevator quick speech on the huge housing project that you just built and what's going on there.
Yeah. To the point of being innovative and doing something disruptive, we partnered there was an older couple who had been living in Aurora. It's one of the you guys may have heard it. It was in the news recently, unfortunately, for some really immigrant, just a tough immigrant conversation. Well, they were 25 years pop-up church in a school cafeteria, and they had prayed and prayed and prayed. They had all of this land. They wanted, Lord, really use this land for your kingdom. And they just prayed. They had no idea what that meant. And through a really unique connection, Jason and this pastor became friends and met. And through a partnership, we now have a housing unit, affordable housing unit that we have built. So there's, I want to say, 300-ish housing units that have been made available to our community that we actually serve. So when we say we want to see you move towards home ownership, we are providing accessible, a stepping stone for you, and we've got to have some say on the terms for how they could get in, and so it made it accessible to our people. And we built a church on the property for that church to work out of, and our cross-purpose day-to-day programming, which is very extensive, operates in it daily. Morning to night, career and community development, counseling services, helping these people really gain access. We pay for that. What is it? We test what are your gifts and talents and abilities. Let's get you in the right career track that makes a livable wage. In Denver is $23 an hour. And we're not only doing that, we're partnering with the employers in the community. We have a network of employers who are saying we will accept your participants when they graduate from your program, so we get seats saved for them. We have housing for them. They're in our legacy program. I oversee that. I'm the VP of Legacy, which is the home ownership and investing, getting them really on their feet to break those cycles of poverty in their family and leave that legacy, estate planning, things we just make it accessible to them. And we're doing that and putting our money where our mouth is. It was a massive, massive project. We just were able to cut the ribbon in September. I was there this week for a program summit, and we're launching full scale in January. That building will be full, and we have 4 locations across the entire Denver area.
Yeah, and I had the privilege of walking that housing unit and seeing some of the residents there. And these are people that might have been on the streets before, definitely at or below risk in terms of economics, poverty. And I asked, like we're walking along, and I said, hey, are you enjoying? And they just spoke so glowingly of this. And what this is, I wrote a book on this, not to sell a book. But basically what this is, I remember drawing this model for Jason and Juan years ago in an airport, but it's a 3-legged stool model, spiritual, social, financial, because that housing project also has to be sustainable, and that involves a business side. So the spiritual game, like a football team, offense, defense, special teams, in what's now and what is next is churches, how they've been playing a single dimensional game. It's all spiritual, but we have to get engaged with the community, and that's going to also require business. If you're a pastor, you're like, hey, I didn't get in to do all that, right? No, you don't have to. No head coach of a football team also coaches the offense, defense, special teams. You have to build a team of expertise. Are you the spiritual guy? Of course, it's all sacred, by the way. But am I a pastor? Great. You need a community development person, an MSW type, and you need a business person. I'm just talking in one. But these teams, that just like in American football, they play synergistically. That's what it's going to require for us to advance the credible gospel and get beyond a single-dimensional game to a multi-dimensional or three-dimensional game. And Providence Bible and Cross Purpose, you need to understand, this isn't your typical, this is the church. Disruptive engagement in the community on the social side, on the business side, and it is what propels the gospel forward. So Christopher, we got about 10 or 12 minutes left, and I've allowed this time where each person gets longer time versus interacting. I really wanted you to meet and hear their hearts. So Christopher, engagement is a key term for you. From the beginning, 20 years ago, before AI was AI, I know it's been a passion of yours that Christ followers have to be engaged with this, not just leveraging it to write your sermon or look up an answer, but talk to us about engagement and from your world in AI, what is now, what is coming. I know it's fascinating, can be scary for some people, overwhelming. You wrote a book about this to help it not be so. So talk to us about that. What is now, what is next in the world of AI?
Well, and to your point on your book on church economics, the afterword, I wrote the afterword, and the afterword had to do with what's coming as far as AI and how that impacts tangibly. So, what we know about technology is technology always creates more opportunities, but the disruptive element in technology creates transitional times where suffering can occur and it can be difficult. So in 2018, the McKinsey Global Institute had a paper out that was talking about how automation due to artificial intelligence was going to directly impact churches, and what they were predicting, and we're still in the time frame of this to happen, by the way. So this is not like the prediction they had then. We're still in it, and we're getting closer to it, and we're seeing it more and more, was that 11 to 22% of people in the United States would become unemployed. So by comparison, that's like Great Depression numbers. Now, in my denomination, 75% of our churches are under 100 members. Now, the interesting piece is 75% of our members are in the 25% of churches that are over 100 members. But to your point on property, I'm in a historic denomination. They have a ton of property. So if you lose 11 to 22% of your potential income in your church, right? Those churches, that 75%, they don't have a chance to have a pastor, much less staff. And what the risk is there is that they lose that institutional advantage they have, which if they're thinking disruptively, they should be thinking about, like if you're a church and you're not thinking about your assets right now and how you can leverage those for the kingdom, you're missing it right now. Because what's going to happen is this is just the beginning of AI. The automation piece is a disruption piece that's going to happen. We're going to deal with it. You're going to have, the example you see is the Tesla Optimus bots that are coming, right? Elon is telling us these things are going to do everything, and they're kind of like a hive mind. You're going to have like the best surgeon in the world in your house. So you start thinking about all of the disruption that causes, and what that means for us with regard to trust and how we steward it. And all of a sudden, there's all of these issues in the church that seem exponentially compounding. So instead of being afraid of that, very much like each person has said here, let's have a participatory theology about it, and let's start to look at what is it that we can do right now to start shaping the technological world that we're in. So I'm in Brickell. We're in the finance, the tech hub. We have right across the street, we have like Google, Microsoft people right there. We have people who are big VCs. We have a billionaire in our church. We have homeless people in our church. Everybody, 50 different nationalities represented, run the gamut on this. The thing is all of that uniqueness makes up a viewpoint in the gospel that helps us to engage what's coming in culture. And so for the Church Leaders Guide for AI, which you all have, if you look in the back of it, there's a Bible study in the back of it. Now, that doesn't sound like it's super pioneering, but what it's meant to do is to get your people together, and I think you'd be wildly surprised how apt your people are to answer questions regarding AI and create an ethic. It's just having a framework, and that's not a prescriptive book. I'm not telling you what you should believe or what you should do. I'm saying here are questions. Go with your people and answer them in your context and your place, and see how the Holy Spirit infuses that. Use the formational guidance that you've received by God through the Scriptures, through the Spirit, through the community of people to understand what is coming in the future. And it's important that we do this because this isn't going to just be, you all use AI now. There's people who will say, well, I'm not going to use AI. And what they mean is like, I decided not to use ChatGPT or something. If you have a digital device, you're using AI already. If you flew here on a plane, you used AI. If you drove here in a car, you used AI. We could be here all day listing how much you're using AI. And the reality is somebody programmed that, and particularly in multi-ethnic places like my church and the churches that you serve, it is so important that we have these conversations now because the way that AI is programmed has bias to it. And it has bias based on the people who are programming it. And you have all the people in your church that are impacting or actually programming the programs that you're using on all sorts of levels. So if we're not having the conversation about that, we actually just aren't using, kind of like we're not using our property or we're not using our other assets. We're looking at it from a 1950s and 60s ministry programming perspective. And what we need to do is leverage those for the kingdom good. Now, beyond that, it gets even more complicated. Because what's going to happen is we're going to start to have identity issues. And that's going to come about because, I don't know about you, my cell phone is literally clipped to me right now. I've denied, on the negative side of AI, 4 telemarketers during this conversation via my watch, right? But this is going to start integrating with who we are and what we are more and more. And we see this with technological advancement. If I didn't have to hold this microphone, if I could augment myself so I could just turn up loud and plug in this, I'd do that easily because I'm in front of people all the time. This will happen so seamlessly that you won't even recognize it. Think about now how many AR glasses are being advertised everywhere. Meta, Oakley, they're promoting it. You see those, it's happening. It will be here. It's happening so subtly that you don't even see it. But what's going to happen is people are going to be able to have radical jumps, and we're going to have questions about what does it actually mean to be human. And I think the answer for us is to go back into the Scriptures and say, what does God tell us about this? Because when Jesus is resurrected, right? I love, we talk in our churches a lot of times, but we don't talk about what's now, but we don't talk about what might be, right? So it's like, if I say, what's the eschaton look like to you? Everybody in here would have a different answer. What exactly happens to you after you die? And they say, we go to heaven. And I say, well, what's that mean? Right? So having that conversation becomes a starting point for us to say, okay, what's the future look like? When we then look at the person of Jesus, Jesus dies and is resurrected. The person of Jesus after the resurrection seems to be very different. Now, in some ways, he's just like us. He's physical. He tells Thomas to touch him, right? He eats. It's always amazing to me. Jesus is effectively showing up in people's kitchens actually for food. If he shows up asking me for Oreos some night, I'm going to wonder what's going on. But it's there's those things, but there's also things about him that are not like us. He walks through locked doors. I've never done that. I don't know if you have, Mark, but I haven't done it yet. He's almost like shapeshifter Jesus. There's disciples who are with him that don't recognize him until he performs ritual action. We don't know exactly what's happening there. But what it tells us is the resurrected version of Jesus is different than the Jesus that had been experiencing for the 3 years prior and beyond. And so the question that what that starts for us to say is, well, what is the possibility of what the future is? And the value of that, I think, is it allows us to say, what are the things that we should be focusing on as a community? There are a lot of hot button issues these days, and everybody wants to fight about whatever the latest hot button issues is. I'm not sure those are the issues really of the church in many ways. Like, I think what we are, we're peacemakers, we're reconcilers. Like we look at that issue and we go, yeah, we're not here to fight. We're here to look at the future and how the future could be. And when we envision a future, a collaborative future, where we don't exclude people, when we're inclusive, when we hear all those voices around the table, God guides us to the place we need to be. And so I think it's easy for people to be fearful about emerging technology. I don't think Christians should be. I think we're as well equipped as anybody in the whole planet to do it. I think the thing that we need to be careful of is that we don't shirk from the God-given responsibility we've been given to engage and to think about what's to come and who we will be and who we can be. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is I have a 10-year-old, and so if you were to have us color a picture together, right? Objectively, you would say to me that I'm a better color than my 10-year-old at this point, right? But how does it risk my son's relationship with me if my son becomes a better colorer than me? I'm still his father. I'm still his parent. I've still helped to shape and to form him. I still share love with him. I don't think the God of all creation, who is everything, right, who has created everything, who doesn't need a thing from us, I don't think God is threatened by our advancement. I don't think we need to be afraid of that. People say, well, are we playing God? Well, what do you mean by that? Like, because in some ways, Jesus calls us to be like God, right? Not to be God, but to be like God. And so why are we afraid of moving into the miraculous? Why are we afraid? Peter heals and resurrects people through the power of the Holy Spirit. So through the power of God, why are we afraid to use technology in transform? I mean, I've not resurrected anybody yet, but we see miraculous things happening with technology, and so we should embrace that, but we should also do that discerningly, and like everything else, to say, how are we using this for the good of God's purposes? Yeah. And then we don't have to fear anything. And to me, this is where the church has this bright light to shine, as we can be this point of hope in a world. We have all these Black Mirror TV dystopian, Schwarzenegger's coming with the Terminators. Like, I don't know. To me, the world is better than it was 500 years ago. What can it be 500 years from now? And I think that's kind of the joy of the privilege of the call that God has put upon our lives.
Yeah, so engaging and leaning in from Christ-centered, the values of Scripture, not being afraid, not shrinking back. Fear is the opposite of faith. And you use the word identity. And there will be threats, and that's going to affect how we pastor, how we lead. You're going to have, let's just call it a robot for the moment, but they're going to be taking care of kids, and your 7-year-old daughter is going to say, "Oh, mommy, I want Sally." For us, this is Sally the robot. I want her to read me the story at bedtime, not you. And that's going to affect people. That's just one thing. Parking lots are going to be worthless because there'll be driverless cars. And what does that mean for you economically in the church? And how do we right now begin to lean into that, to understand what's coming and then disrupt the way we're engaging the community? I mean, I'm going to go, hey, I got a Dr. Martin Luther King for you, $8,000. Looks like Martin Luther King, sounds like Martin Luther King, uploaded with everything Dr. King ever thought, has what's that called? Machine learning. It'll learn your environment, etc. It can preach better than you. It can counsel better than you and teach. And I can get it to you for $8,000 a year, $8,000 one time with an annual cost. And half your staff's not needed because you can't afford them. You see, all of that is coming, and much more. Potentially genetics, right? And the encode, and you got the nanobots or the
Yeah,
nano.
it's interesting because we talk about AI, but really talking about AI right now is like talking about the internet when it was invented.
Yeah,
You'd never
exactly.
have a conference on the internet now. That would just seem ridiculous,
Right,
right?
and what
it's
you
going to be
talk-
AI in everything, and to your exact point, like part of the discernment process, and that's part of the benefit of the book for people, is to say, what are the things that are uniquely human about the ministry that you're doing?
Yeah.
And what I love about what all of you said is you've named those things concretely in the context that you're at by engaging with people through the Spirit of God. And I think those are the things that we continue to look at. And we are going to have a time when we're going to have to talk about robot rights and all the,
Yeah.
this stuff is
They're
coming.
going to want to get baptized. Seriously, they're going to want to get baptized. What does that do in theology? They're going to want to, all that is coming. And I think what I love about Christopher, I've known him over 10 years, is lean into all that. Don't be afraid of it. Understand what's coming in. How do we steward technology for the kingdom of God? How do we infuse it and all that stuff, and the identity issues and on we could talk. One thing, I'll just close, and we need to close now, but I learned from Christopher, don't think about it like artificial intelligence. Think about it as alternative intelligence. And if you think God is the prime intelligence, right, and the capital I intelligence, plant life, a tree has intelligence. You taught me. I just let you teach,
no.
but you're a preacher like me. We got to get out of here.
Yeah,
But the bottom
yeah.
line is anything.
But the easy way to think about this, and the
Yeah.
elevator pitch is, you're not God, and if you disagree with that, any of us are available for counseling afterwards, right? But we're not God. So compared to God, we're alternative intelligence, just like a cat would be, or
That's right.
And so if you look at the world that way, all technology, which is everything that we experience as matter, everything is divine technology. And we're called to co-create, to steward that technology. And so when you start looking at it through that hermeneutic, that lens, all of a sudden you see what great love God has for us and trust God has in us to be the co-creators and the caretakers of all creation. This is a far bigger mission than we have allowed ourselves to understand. And now our eyes are getting opened to the wonder of it. And that's the great thing about this conference, is that you continue to do that with people, to say the work of God is so much bigger. Lean into the greatness that God has given you.
Awesome. Well, let's thank our panelists here and our voices that are here. Say, Christopher, of course, and Melissa. And I just say, if you walk out with 3 words, think disruptive, peacemaking, engagement. Disruptive, peacemaking, engagement. Disruptive means not just sustaining what we've always done. This is the 21st, not the 20th century. Disruptive, peacemaking, engagement along the 3 fronts of the spiritual, the social, and the financial, economic, which again, it's all sacred to God, but it's not a single dimensional game. So God bless you. Thanks for being at the conference. Remember, 1:15, we're going to push things forward to get everyone out sooner. So it says 1:30 on your schedule. 1:15, get off campus, get your lunch, come right back, and we'll see you at 1:15 for workshops. Thanks so much.
Give our affection, all our attention, nothing more worth it than being with you. Sweeter than honey, peace like a river.
not worth it, 'cause all we're seeking, Lord, all we're after is the presence of the Lord our God, the presence of the Lord our God. We want the giver more than the gifts we receive. We want the healer more than the healing you bring. We want Jehovah, Messiah, the Spirit of the living God above all things. We just want you. God, we just want you. We just want you. If you're not in it, then we don't want it. If you're not present, then it's not worth it. 'Cause all we're seeking, Lord, all we're after is the presence of the Lord our God, is the presence of the Lord our God. We want the giver more than the gifts we receive. We want the healer more than the healing you bring. We want Jehovah, Messiah, the Spirit of the living God above all things. We just want you. You alone are the author of all things. Stretch the skies and pour the sea. Who is like the Lord? Infinite, beyond what my mind conceives. Rider of eternity. Who is like the Lord?
Great I am, you're the God who knows all things. Over all you reign supreme. Who is like the Lord? You alone will return our coming King, making right our broken things. Who is like the
We want the giver more than the gifts we receive. We want the healer more than the healing you bring. We want Jehovah, Messiah, the Spirit of the living God above all things. We just want you, Lord, above all things. We just want you. God, we just want you. 'Cause we want the giver more than the gifts we receive. We want the healer more than the healing you bring. We want Jehovah, Messiah, the Spirit of the living God above all things. We just want you above all things. We just want you.
Just want to read from Psalm 95, our call to come and worship the Lord. Oh, come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise to him with songs of praise, for the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hands are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountains are his also. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land.
my mind. I got people waiting by. Close my eyes and I can see. Dancing on them golden streets. Got me dreaming of the day. Never leave, we get to stay. Till I see that welcome sign. I